They called it a 3-day operation. It became a 1,000-day machine that eats men. The most chilling line of this war isn't a new hypersonic acronym or a fresh trench on the map. It's a monthly body count that belongs in a different century. NATO's Secretary General, Mark Rutte, said it bluntly. In an average month, Russia is losing 20 to 25,000 soldiers killed, not casualties, killed. At that pace, a single calendar page costs the Kremlin more lives than the Soviet Union admitted losing in a decade in Afghanistan. That isn't just tragic, it's strategically terminal. If you want to understand why that one metric bends the arc of the entire war, rewind to the first hours. Moscow expected Kyiv to fold, Europe to fracture, and the West to run out of patience and ammunition before Russia ran out of men. Instead, the front hardened, Ukraine innovated under fire, and Russia's army marched into a self-built meat grinder of artillery, trenches, mines, and drones. The result is a kill rate that NATO now calls unsustainable, a diplomat's word for this ends in collapse.
Numbers in war are always contested, but some are harder to deny than others. Independent Russian outlets, Mediazona and partners, have been doing grim forensic accounting. Graves counted, obituaries archived, court files read. By late 2025, they had confirmed more than 156,000 Russian soldiers by name, while their excess mortality analysis suggests that 2024 alone took at least 100,000 Russian soldiers' lives. These are conservative figures that lag reality. The true number is higher. In other words, the iceberg you can see already dwarfs the ship. Western assessments trace the same curve. A detailed Center for Strategic and International Studies study projected Russia would hit 1 million total casualties, killed and wounded, by the summer of 2025, with as many as 250,000 dead by May of that year. Britain's defence intelligence now pegs Russia's 2025 losses alone at roughly 415,000 killed and wounded, bringing total Russian casualties since February 2022 to approximately 1.21 to 1.22 million. That's not propaganda, it's a rough consensus built from overlapping data streams that all point in the same direction: up, fast, and unsustainable. Context matters. In the Iran-Iraq War, an 8-year horror often cited as the late 20th century's bloodiest interstate slugfest, scholars estimate roughly 367,000 to 500,000 total battlefield deaths across both sides, averaging perhaps 5,000 to 6,000 a month. By contrast, NATO says Russia alone is losing up to 25,000 killed in a single month in Ukraine. We are not comparing apples to oranges, we're comparing one of history's worst grind-downs to a modern army burning through its force at a peacetime shattering rate. Let's pull the camera back further. The Soviet Union officially admitted around 15,000 dead over 10 years in Afghanistan. At present rates, today's Russia will bleed out in 2 or 3 weeks. Whatever happens tactically at Avdiivka, Kupiansk, or Pokrovsk, the larger truth is brutal arithmetic, and arithmetic is destiny.
What does unsustainable look like on the ground? Battalion tactical groups filled with mobilized men who got a couple of weeks with a rifle. Assault companies replenished from prisons. Officers were yanked out of retirement to replace captains and majors who are never coming back. Airborne troops, once Russia's elite shock force, ground down and repurposed as line infantry for trench assaults. Command attrition that forces faster, riskier promotions. In a modern army, professionalism is compound interest. You earn it slowly and you lose it fast. At 20 to 25,000 dead a month, Russia is spending its principle. On Ukraine's side, losses are also severe. Kyiv speaks carefully about its dead. The United Nations counts civilian casualties that rose sharply in 2025. Every night sky in Ukraine tells that story plainly. But even with all the fog of war, the pattern is consistent. Russia is bleeding faster and deeper. War is a contest of will, yes, but it is also a contest of math and time. and neither are sentimental. Here's the operational engine behind those numbers. Russia built a war plan that treats people like a munition. When drones spot a trench line, artillery pounds it, and wave after wave of infantry tries to occupy it. Sometimes a flag goes up for a ruined village. More often, the ground is laced with mines, saturated by Ukrainian artillery, and swept by first-person view drones. If you can't maneuver and you can't protect your troops from sensors and precision fires, you can still attack. You just can't do it without consuming your army. NATO's Rutte didn't present a theory, he presented a monthly obituary. Independent trackers have documented thousands of dead Russian officers, the backbone of any army's competence. Mediazona's court record deep dives also show a bureaucratic wave of death declarations for the missing. Tens of thousands of families going to court so the state can officially find men whose bodies were never recovered. It's a macabre paperwork trail that hints at a much larger, uncounted toll. You can fudge a press release. You can't fake 9 months of backlogged probate.
Strategically, Russia is in a paradox.
The Kremlin can keep attacking even as it loses catastrophically. Repression buys time, mobilization buys bodies, propaganda buys quiet. But extension is not victory. Every month, 20,000 dead tighten the vice on what remains militarily possible. Victory in modern war requires a force that can maneuver, regenerate, coordinate, and adapt. What Russia has built is a force that survives by burning itself down. When your operational plan relies on, we'll just have fewer soldiers tomorrow, you don't have a plan, you have a countdown. If your monthly KIA would fill a sports arena, the only home advantage is that the stadium is closer to the cemetery. Compare the learning curves. Ukraine digitized its fires, refined drone reconnaissance, and hardened its defense in depth. Western training seeded NCO culture and mission command. Meanwhile, Russia's field improvisations run into institutional brick walls. Corruption strangles logistics, micromanagement freezes initiative, and casualty replacements turn units into revolving doors. You can conscript a body, you cannot conscript experience. That takes time, and Russia is paying in months what a competent military invests over decades.
Consider the demographic shadow. Russia entered the war with a shrinking labor pool and an aging population. Kill or maim over 1 million men of fighting age, and you don't just lose soldiers, you lose foremen, teachers, engineers, and future fathers. The prosthetics industry shouldn't be a growth sector in a healthy country. In Russia, senior officials now brag about it. That's not a victory lap, that's a confession. Casualty figures are messy by nature. Moscow releases almost none. Kyiv has incentives to project Russian weakness. Western estimates range. But when NATO places monthly Russian deaths in the 20,000 to 25,000 band, and independent Russian media confirm named death tolls that explode year over year, you don't need unanimity to see the outline of a disaster. The exact number is debated, the trend is not. And trend lines, not headlines, decide how wars end. Let's stress test the headline claim: largest troop deaths in modern history with care. World War II eclipses everything in absolute terms. But if we confine ourselves to the post-1945 era, and especially to month-by-month rates for a single belligerent in a conventional interstate war, the NATO-cited Russian death rate appears unmatched in generations. Even the Iran-Iraq War's horrific totals averaged far fewer monthly deaths per side over 8 years. This is what makes the present moment historically unique. A major power feeding a modern army into a sustained industrial-scale kill zone at a rate previously associated with world wars, not regional conflicts. The battlefield technology stack explains part of the mismatch. Cheap FPV drones have turned no man's lands into kill webs. Digital targeting fuses satellites, small quadcopters, and artillery into near real-time strike chains. Minefields herd attackers into predictable paths, while counter-battery radars and loitering munitions punish any mass that shows itself. The side that throws bodies at that ecosystem becomes a statistics lesson. NATO's Rutte wasn't speaking in hypotheticals, he was reading the bill. And yet, the Kremlin pushes on. Why? Because politically, retreat threatens the regime more than attrition. Because the propaganda mill insists that holding the line is the same as winning the war. Because a regiment of the mobilized can be replaced faster than an honest conversation can be had on TV. But in the ledger that matters, the force generation cycle, Russia is overdrafting. Training pipelines can't turn civilians into competent soldiers at the pace the front is consuming them. You can order a mobilization, you cannot order mastery. Here's the cold math behind that. The wounded to killed ratio in this conflict is skewing lower than in past wars, because drones and mines deny medevac and the golden hour. When a soldier is hit in a trench that's still under quadcopter observation, the next thing that arrives is often another drone. That reality compresses survival odds and drives the killed figure up relative to total casualties. It's one reason the NATO numbers sound apocalyptic. They are. A look at crowdsourced data from Russian regions adds texture. The burden is unequal. Rural and minority republics have paid outsized shares in blood. Court cases to declare the missing dead spiked in 2024 and 2025, unlocking compensation but leaving the families with a piece of paper instead of a body. Meanwhile, named lists grow like weeds. Mediazona's count climbed from the tens of thousands into the six figures in less than 2 years. An institutional record of grief the state cannot fully hide. By late 2025, even optimistic Kremlin narratives had to tiptoe around the scale of loss. British defence assessments tallied roughly 430,000 Russian casualties in 2024 and about 415,000 in 2025 alone, with daily averages surging above 1,000 late in the year. Put differently, even when Moscow wasn't scoring operational breakthroughs, it was still losing a battalion's worth of men every day. That is not maneuver warfare. That is a national hemorrhage.
Let's be precise about why this pace ends wars. First, it annihilates small unit leadership. Sergeants and junior officers are the memory of a military. Lose enough of them and your formations are units on paper. Second, it chokes adaptation. Complex operations require trust, skill, and repetition, things a revolving door army cannot supply. Third, it degrades the home front. 1 million killed and wounded is not a number. It's millions of parents, spouses, and children living with absence. In the short term, repression suppresses backlash. In the long term, demographics cash the check. Meanwhile, Ukraine and its partners don't need to win every day to win the war. They need to make Russia pay this monthly price until Moscow's leaders decide that what they can sell as victory at home is a ceasefire abroad. Support, ammo, air defense, training turns NATO's unsustainable into unavoidable. The quicker the gap closes between "we can't keep doing this" and "we won't keep doing this," the fewer names end up in anyone's count. This is where the past becomes a warning label. Afghanistan taught Moscow that long wars with mounting death tolls rot the center from within. The current statistics dwarf that lesson. If the Soviet Union lost around 15,000 in 10 years, and modern Russia is losing that many in weeks, the slope of the curve, not just the point on it, tells you everything. Grand strategy is written in attrition graphs, not parades. So is Putin's war over? Not in the sense of guns falling silent tomorrow, but in the sense that the war's strategic outcome is already on the page? Yes. The casualty curve has become the verdict. Moscow can still escalate, still destroy, still terrorize cities and scorch fields. But every month, at 20 to 25,000 dead, deepens a hole the Russian state cannot climb out of, without redefining victory down to, "we stop here." That decision will come dressed in solemn language about peace and security. The real author will be math. For viewers who crave the hard comparisons, here they are without varnish. Iran-Iraq, perhaps 367,000 war dead over 8 years across both sides. Awful, but averaging far lower monthly deaths per belligerent than what Russia is now suffering alone. Afghanistan, around 15,000 Soviet dead in 10 years. Ukraine, 2022 to 2026. NATO says up to 25,000 Russian soldiers killed per month. In a modern industrialized society, that rate is not a wartime tempo. It's a slow-motion national suicide. There's a cruel irony too. The Kremlin spent 2 decades selling a story of military renaissance, new tanks, shiny missiles, precision command. But when tested, the machine produced massed infantry attacks under drone-scorched skies. Russia still fields artillery, armour and air defences that command respect. What it no longer fields in depth is the human capital that turns hardware into power. And hardware does not cower under FPV drones. Humans do. Lose enough of them, and you end up with a battlefield full of gear and nobody qualified to use it. We should also say what this video is not: a victory dance. Every number here contains families. Every line on a chart hides a face. Ukraine's own losses are heavy and heartbreaking. The United Nations civilian tallies speak to the cost that Russians imposed on Ukrainians across 2025. But war isn't scored on sympathy, it's decided by staying power. And by NATO's account, Russia's staying power is bleeding out at a rate no modern army can sustain for long. If you're a Russian soldier watching this, the dark humor writes itself. When NATO starts quoting your KIA rate like a weather forecast, looks like 25,000 with a chance of sanctions, it's time to find an umbrella and a resignation letter. If you're a planner in Moscow, the joke's on your spreadsheets. The replacement flows do not match the loss curves, and the skill curves are trending the wrong way. That's not a Western narrative, it's the Kremlin's own math coming home. For Europe and the United States, the lesson is ruthless clarity. Sustain Ukraine's air defense, artillery and training pipelines, and the math keeps doing its work. Don't get distracted by propaganda spurts or small map movements. Watch the monthly line. As long as it hovers around 20,000 dead, the Kremlin's strategic portfolio is collapsing in slow motion. This is one of those rare wars where patience plus logistics beats theatrics plus blood. And a final comparison, because history has a way of insisting on footnotes. In the late Cold War, a prolonged, faraway conflict helped crack the Soviet center. Today's conflict is not far away for Russia, it is next door, and it is far bloodier on a per-month basis. The political economy of grief will not obey censors forever. When the war's most quoted statistic is a monthly KIA bracket, the rest is just waiting for leaders to admit what the numbers have already decided. So here's the end of the beginning, because that's what this is. The largest month-by-month troop deaths endured by a modern army in decades are happening right now, and they are Russia's. The shooting may continue, the fronts may lurch, statements will be made, maps will be redrawn, flags will be planted on rubble and called victories. But the strategic outcome is etched into the casualty curve. A force that cannot regenerate cannot prevail. Putin's war is not over in noise, it is over in numbers. The rest is a matter of time and of how many more names we allow to be added before the truth becomes official.